I'd like to welcome, for our last session of the day, Municipal Affairs Provincial Administrator Paul Chang walks us through the building discipline session, learn about some of the changes in the National Building Code 2023 Alberta Edition, and discuss technical changes, explore the harmonization project, and gain insight into the application of Alberta's Tier 1 for Section 936 of the NBC Alberta Edition and the National Energy Code for Building 2020. I just want to say, we're always trying to find connections and government regulators that will engage with us. I just want to say that Paul has engaged with us. He's really, opened up his doors, lots of great communication. He's been to several events now and presented for us. So, we love it when government comes and talks to us because it helps us get through our day. So, Paul Chang. No. You can beat up Paul. Go ahead. That's all good.
Yeah, I'll just blame it on the government. Yeah, it's going to be short and sweet, I think, because I'm between you guys and supper, I think. Okay, I'll just real quick going through. Alberta has a safety code system under the Safety Codes Act where every building construction discipline under the inspectors and regulations is under the one act. So there are other administrators that are under fire, electrical, elevators, plumbing, gas, private sewage, and pressure vessels, and we're all under the one act, and we all talk to each other. So Municipal Affairs, Mr. Rick McIver, he couldn't make it today. Deputy Minister Brandy Cox, and Provincial Administrator position. It's an appointed position by ministerial order, so it is a statutory position, and I'm going to scoot through this real quick too. Through ministerial order, so under that, I get assigned a certain range of powers, which allows me to do the stand data that we did there with the window opening control devices, and that's called a variance, alternative solution variance, and that is considered the rule, or same as code, province-wide. So you don't have to go to this city, and say, can I use this? Here's an alternative solution. That can still happen, but when it's a province-wide issue, then it comes to me. And then we look at it, is it a province-wide issue? And we work through that system with stakeholders, such as Fenestration Canada, and then we end up with a stand data. It doesn't always happen, but when it happens, that's how we do it. I doubled up on that. So all the systems basically under Safety Codes Act must meet requirements of the provincial law, which includes all the applicable codes and standards. And then on the responsibilities of the act, there's the owner's care and control, design duties, manufacturer's duties, contractors and vendors' duties. So it applies to anybody that deals with the building code, electrical codes, and so on, but also for vendors and so on. Everybody has their responsibility identified under the act. So basically it says, here's your responsibilities, lays it out in compliance with the act. And has 21 regulations and 11 safety disciplines. Under Safety Codes Council website, where to get a permit will indicate which municipalities and where you can get a permit. So there are areas that don't do permits. That'll be federal lands and First Nation lands. So under professional schedules, we work with the Architects Association, PEGA, the Provincial Professional Engineers and Geoscientists, Safety Codes Council, and ourselves, developing professional schedules for the Part 3 buildings. So once they're involved, they have to provide certain schedules in the start of the project and for completion of the project. Of course, there's the encapsulated mass timber construction buildings, 12-story. We did it under stand data the last code cycle to allow this to go ahead. And now it's within the National Building Code 2020 and incorporated, of course, in the NBC 2023. And that's up to 12-story, and we're already getting asked about the 18-story. So that might come along as well. So Adrian has spoken on quite a bit of this stuff, so it's probably a bit of a repeat. Combustible window sashes and frames. now permitted in non-combustible construction or EMTC buildings. So that's mass timber buildings, and you can deal with the space between them as you need for your contiguous installations. Transparent doors and panels. Of course, that would be safety glazing as required for transparent doors and panels. And of course, my notes aren't showing up, so I'm winging it right now. What happened? Okay, no worries. Okay, safety glazing, again, as Adrian had alluded there or had said, parts 3 and parts 9, there's safety glazing required around tubs and showers. That was added in to the 2020 National Building Code, but we've had it in the Alberta codes for the past 2 or 3 code cycles. And so now they're harmonizing with us. Safety glazing as well is now prescribed in assembly occupancies in certain locations where impact can happen. So like in pools, pool halls, bars, and so forth, there are certain locations and for certain heights and distances that safety glazing would be required. Okay, so certain locations, there's safety glass. No numbers put in here because I stole the picture. Okay, exit doors. Of course, you're going to have your exit doors. You'll push hardware and so forth. But under exit doors, there's the typical exit doors and exit signage. Under the new allowances in certain occupancies where there have occupants with cognitive disabilities, you're now allowed to have a door that doesn't look like a door. Basically, they can put murals on them and so on. It's only in the certain occupancy type. And then there is certain procedures for who can use it and so forth. What's happened in facilities with dementia patients, they'll go and try a door and it says, it'll release in 15 seconds, it'll alarm or whatever. But they will try it until it eventually opens because they recognize it as a door. There's something there. So if they don't recognize it as a door, they'll go and see a cabinet and then walk on. And so it's to reduce that situation. They've had situations where patients will go out a door, and if it's not alarmed, they don't know about it. And if it's in the middle of winter, which has happened, then bad things happen. So part 5, environmental separation. Of course, adding to information and drawings, required in drawings, be clear and legible. So this is going to be Division C, Part 2, when you have professional involvement. So anything with environmental separations, they're going to, require professional involvement. So hopefully they're doing it correctly, so you have something to work from. That's also consistent with what code requires and what you can do within your world. Again, new materials and standards applicable to environmental separators and assemblies. Part 9, again, protection of windows. This change did come through Alberta as presented to the National Building Code committees. And it was, again, I can't remember who had mentioned that. It was through the medical doctors association, I believe it was, or medical doctors, with lots of lobbying through the government and other avenues to add this into the code. So it was presented via Alberta to the National Building Code. So the protection of windows, that's an Alberta thing that is now national, but the intent was to reduce the possibility of small children going through windows. However, you see that one there, that's not going to help anything because there's a chair there. So your window could open, it's at the right height, but it was to show that you can't codify everything. Provide the right window, provide the right height or whatever. Kids will be kids and kids climb. So under building code variance, administrator could issue a variance that's applicable across the province and published through our website, which we did with the WOCD variance to recognize, is that 30, what's the ASTM number again? F29. Oh, here it is. What the heck? I had it in here. So, and this has been provided to Fenestration Canada. So these are all linked into the document. And then what that is, again, the stand data process, which I believe is unique in Alberta, for Alberta across the country, that we are able to issue certain documents that will recognize, especially new technology. The code can't keep up with certain technologies and so forth, that we can recognize it if it meets certain criteria, such as meeting natural standard. That standard that's not recognized within the National Building Code. We can recognize that early. And same like the 12-story and possibly the 18-story EMTC building. If that's recognized to be coming into the national code, we could look at that if the proper process is followed before that tree shows up in the national code, or as a second printing or an interim printing for Alberta. Section 936, Tier 1, Energy Efficiency, Tier 1. Alberta has issued a stand data in regards to what is prescribed in our regulations for adopting Tier 1. It was supported by Build Alberta, the building industry, and stakeholders. So we did do stakeholder engagement. And even though there are some builders building to higher tiers, it was found that in certain areas, they like to do the Tier 1 and they're good. But if we work on Tier 1, we can address the issues now that we'll find with inspection, submission of plans, the templates, energy advisors, and so on. And we are working with the Canadian Association of Certified Energy Advisors to work on template documents. So whatever we run into in Tier 1, if we can try and address those issues now, we don't jump to Tier 2 or Tier 3 and find those same issues. Well, there'll be new issues possibly, likely, and we'll address it then. But we're trying to figure out Tier 1, so it's for the inspectors. Of course, there was one thing in there where under National Building Code of Canada, if you didn't do by energy performance design, it didn't say you were required to do blower door testing. It just gave you a higher number for your air changes an hour. So to prove it, you had to do blower door testing. It was optional, but it was almost mandatory. So we took that out of Alberta, the Alberta Edition, and made the air changes an hour the same for whether it's prescriptive or the presented air changes an hour, whether it was prescriptive or by energy performance. So then if you want to go lower than 2.5 air changes an hour, then you would do blower door tests. And then that made it also more consistent across the board. We are working with energy advisors and so forth, should things change. And the other thing we did was in certain municipalities were thinking of jumping to Tier 2 or 3 on their own because they had a charter. And there was some inconsistencies in the interpretation of the wording. And we rewrote our portion of 936 to indicate Tier 1 is the minimum. And then the rest of the tiers are optional. Whereas we didn't want an inconsistent approach across the province for every municipality pick their own tier. They could do that by incentivizing going to a higher tier, but not under the Safe Builds Act. Climatic data has changed. So that's just a quick map. And
Question.
Sorry.
Yeah, someone sent me a document a couple months ago, and it's called BILD Alberta.
Build Alberta.
Yeah, and
Yep.
in it,
They have 10 issues.
and it says here, tier code. While presented in this code, tier compliance will not be enforced and is reserved for marketing purposes by consumer demand.
Tier compliance of tiers 2 and up.
It doesn't.
For
say
the,
that.
yeah, there, it was,
It just says tier compliance will not be enforced.
yeah, they're talking higher than the base.
Tier 1. Okay.
Yeah, tier one will be enforced. Yeah, we actually went over that with them, but we probably missed how that wording came out. But we did, yeah. Yeah. We'll probably touch base with Bill and say, hey, maybe we have to add another word or something. We did look at it. So we do work closely with Bill. And they shared that document. We provide some information that they put in there to clarify the air changes now or some of the Alberta specific changes we did to address some of the concerns. And one of the other concerns under tier one was the peak cooling loads. The way it was presented at the time, there was concerns with it that it was causing issues that were unintended consequences. Not saying that you shouldn't have cooling in the house to address that, but their method for doing peak cooling loads was a concern even for the energy advisors. And that would affect the fenestration industry drastically one way or another. So that is being looked at the national level to address some of the concerns, which could include requiring cooling, us maybe similar to BC or just requiring it. We don't know yet. And then there is a percentage level they're looking at. So that's a little bit outside, or a lot outside my scope, but the energy advisors were telling me or informing me that is being looked at a national level in relation to that to address the concerns. So we're not dealing with that specifically in Alberta because we made subsection 936.7 and 936.8 are optional. And that's where peak cooling load kicks in, is you have to jump to 936.7 or 936.8. Oops, where am I going? Oh, National Energy Code of Canada for buildings. Again, energy efficiency tier one, it's written in our regulations that the NDCB selected by Alberta as an applicable mandatory tier. And again, it's optional that you could fall to go to a higher tier, build a passive house, whatever. But that's optional. But we are looking at the building industry looked at that and to try to jump to a higher tier, and especially now they're looking housing attainability and affordability. They're competing agendas when you're trying to add a cost to a house when it's not an issue of health and safety and try and get a lot of houses out. So they are competing agendas and the government is looking at that. And so is the industry as well. They're looking at things as well. If you add that, it gets transferred to the consumer, the bottom line, and then it'll be a less of a market for people trying to get into housing, as it already is now. Again, the energy performance new part 10 introduced in NECB. Basically, NECB 2020, you follow that prescriptively or the performance path, and you've met code. And to go to the higher tiers, you show or design how much the percentage better than you are than tier one will give you the applicable tiers. Contour map, again, that's showing your average heating degree days. We are working on another stand data dealing with heat pump requirements and so forth. That's not addressed in the current code or the National Building Code of Canada. So this is one map, and we're going to be doing another map to show some compliance requirements for different or new refrigeration equipment. Again, National Building Code 23 Alberta Edition is free download from the NRC site. If you buy the paper copy, it's $100, and it's heavy and 2 big books. NECB 2020, again, also free download from NRC. And in discussions with NRC, they're expecting or hoping by later this summer to have the intent statements, the user's guides for the building and energy codes for the NBC 2020 and the NECB 2020. So they are working on that. They were hoping to have it out earlier, but it's just one of those things. So they are working on that to get that publication out. Again, that's the publication site where you get the current codes and past codes, because for Alberta, we have the things for existing buildings that you don't necessarily bring it up to today's code, because you put in a high-end performance window on a 2x4 wall is not going to help a whole lot. It will help, but the thing with using old code under sometimes the fire discipline or even the building discipline, as long as you're not decreasing the safety or performance of the building, then you can almost do like for like. But what you can buy now, you're not getting your usual single pane installations. They're usually looking for some sort of upgrade. And that was,
Yeah.
like I said, short and sweet questions.
Thanks, Paul. One of the slides that referenced the combustible, non-combustible.
Yeah.
It looked like you're saying that change applies to EMTC buildings,
Also, yes.
but that's not what it says in the NBC. Did Alberta do something through a variance?
No, that's where it says in the NBC.
The EMTC did not change. It stayed at 1 meter separation.
Oh, I didn't put a separation in there. I said that had to be taken care of by you guys.
Okay, I get you. Okay.
I don't have a
I thought you were
you-
saying that it was referencing the change.
It's reference to change that you can use them without combustible
Okay,
windows.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Didn't really change then. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any other
yeah,
questions?
because under EMTC, it's everything else, even for electrical, you reference the section for non-combustible construction.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see a lot of things if you deal with the EMT section, it's not referenced there. It'll send you to requirements for non-combustible construction.
Yeah, in the other section, it gives you a non-contiguous statement,
Yeah,
whereas in the EMT section, it still
it
says
says-
1 meter
yeah,
separation.
but
Okay,
but you are allowed, before you weren't allowed
gotcha. Okay,
combustible.
thank you.
Now you are. Made that up.
I think it's fair to assume there'll be some confusion on sites with WOCDs.
Yeah.
I think the stand data will cover 95% of that. Is there an avenue for us to reach out to your office for the 5% that might not solve?
Let me, where did I put that? Yeah, I'm not gonna give you my email. Oh, here it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and it will be, that's included in the slide deck, but safety.services@gov.ab.ca. That's my team of building technical advisors take turns taking calls during the day. And it's like anything else. Any stand data, any document, it takes care of most of the situations. And if you have the oddball one, we'll try to help. If we can, we'll do our best. But sometimes it's like, well, you can't use that. You just have to raise your window or something. We don't know the situation, but neither will you until somebody asks that question. What about this? So, but we try to do that is clarify interpretations and provide opinions from our office through the duty officer. And they're called opinions because the authority having jurisdiction is the HJ. And then if it comes down to, if there's an ambiguity in the code that would affect province-wide or even a municipality, and I provide my interpretation, if it comes from me as an interpretation, then that would take precedence. But that's handled very carefully.
Terry, I don't know if this is for Paul or for yourself, but for those of us in the room that don't know the difference, what's the difference between a tier and a step? BC has step,
Yes,
here is
BC
tier.
has a step code. The rest of the country has a tiered code.
Okay.
Except for
Lucky us.
except for Ontario that is
Yes.
the two
SB 12.
SB 12.
Yeah, it's just they call their tier steps, and they don't, like they believe they said it doesn't exactly align. Oh, that was in a meeting I was this morning. Presentation from BC talking about what steps they are at, but they also provide the steps and provide the municipalities to pick their steps. And then
BC,
and
sorry.
Vancouver, City of Vancouver can pick their own because they're a charter city.
BC has more hills, so there's steps. The rest of the country has more tiers because they're not BC.
I forgot that slide, Terry. Sorry.
So for the safety glazing for showers and tubs, are you saying that a shower door is required for those?
I'm not saying a shower door. It's the glazing is required to be safety glazing. If you put one in, if you put one in,
Yeah.
if it's a curtain, then that's not glazing. Yeah, like I said, I
You
went
have a
through it
very
pretty quick.
quizzical look on your face.
Well, I think my question might be stupid, but I'm going to do it anyways. So I don't know if I understand the stand data process.
Okay.
This sounds, I don't, do we do
like
that?
a
Do
code
we do that in Ontario?
No.
That's why I don't understand it. So like, is there a bunch of window opening control devices that are already approved under the stand data, or you have to apply for this in order to have it? How does this work?
Specifically references F29 compliant WOC.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's certified,
Yeah.
it complies. So if a new manufacturer comes out, says, I've done my, this design, got their certification, that standard covers it.
Okay, good.
You don't come for each one. We don't do product. We're not doing product approval.
Right.
It would have to be
yeah.
a product that qualifies under the ASTM F2090 standard.
Yeah, I was smitten with this fear that my reporting on this had been wrong, and that there was actually some sort of
Does that ever happen?
case by case situation. It happens all the time. No.
Oh, no. The case was the one case of fenestration can and dealing with that standard, but not a case by product, because we don't do product or product or specific item certification or recognition.
Paul, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a
Appreciate
lot.
your time. Great.